The Latin American country has had quite the rollercoaster ride over the past 30 years, surprising everyone along the way. Panama may get a bad rep for its involvement in shady financial dealings involving the wealthy and the powerful, but don't be too quick to judge. Despite its scandals, Panama has defied political and economic expectations and emerged as a shining star in Latin America. They maintain a stable democracy and have become the fastest growing economy in the region. Who would have thought that a country known for corruption would end up being a model of economic success? Just goes to show, you can't judge a country by its scandals. Panama sure knows how to keep us on our toes with its unique path to success. How have they evolved over the years? Let's go back to the 1980s. Panama is an unusual example of democratization. Although the US's December 1989 operation Just Cause resulted in hundreds of deaths and was severely criticized by the international community, an uncomfortable truth still stands. It was effective. The winner of the May 1989 presidential election, Guillermo Endara, took office when dictator Manuel Noriega was overthrown. Soon enough, democracy emerged. Since 1995, Freedom House categorized Panama as free. In addition, the nation has mostly escaped the hazards that other Latin American democracies have, including elected tyrants, military takeovers, and the collapse of party systems. These were great milestones after all the conflict from World War II. Why is that? Well, since World War II, only two nations, Panama and Grenada, have effectively embraced democracy through military invasion. But this isn't the whole truth. Panama had decades of democratic experience prior to the military takeover in 1968. So the invasion in 1989 didn't create the democracy, it just restored it. Now, besides being unique in its democratic shift, Panama has another important feature. It has the Panama Canal. Let me tell you more about this huge construction. Initially, a French enterprise held the concession to construct the canal. They spent over 10 years working on it, but the business failed. The concession of all its equipment was sold to the US government. The Panama Canal is unbelievably important. It reduces travel time and distance. Ships traveling from California to Europe took far longer before the canal. The trips were shortened by the canal by up to 8,000 nautical miles. In about 10 hours, it connects the Atlantic and Pacific. Before then, ships would have to go all the way around South America just to reach the other side. So now you must be thinking of Panama as having all the factors that make it a successful economy. But let me tell you how they actually managed to handle everything to become what they are. But before we go into it, if you like this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. To begin with, Panama's economy has grown quickly in spite of extremely high levels of corruption. With an average annual growth rate of 5.9% between 1990 and 2019, Panama's economy grew at the quickest rate in Latin America. In terms of PPP, it now has the greatest GDP per capita in the region, and the UN regards it as an example of very high human development. But don't forget, Panama is an incredibly corrupt nation. The Corruption Perceptions Index indicates that Panama ranks 111th in the world, which makes it among the most corrupt nations in Latin America. Isn't it weird that it has a high degree of corruption and at the same time, it's growing fast? I feel your confusion, so let me tell you, how does Panama manage to thrive? It turns out that there are various types of corruption, some of which are more detrimental to the economy than others. This could make the effects of the 2016 Panama Paper scandal more clear. According to experts, even though the tax evasion and money laundering practices exposed by the scandal were inappropriate, it's unclear if they truly qualified as corruption. That is, if corruption is defined as the misuse of public authority for personal benefit. Also, it doesn't appear that they have hurt the Panamanian economy. After all, it's one of the planet's greatest tax havens. As a result, the 2021 Pandora Papers shouldn't have a significant detrimental effect on Panama's economy. Another key factor behind Panama's economic success is the effective management of the Panama Canal after its transfer from the US to Panama in 1999. Panama provides a model example of how a nationalized company should be managed. While the oil sector in Venezuela is only one example of how nationalized companies should not be managed, the Panama Canal, which is the backbone of the Panamanian economy, is a prime example of efficient resource management. You don't believe us? Let me tell you that from 2000 to 2008, canal contributions to the national treasury doubled. Actually, Panama ran the canal much more efficiently and commercially than so many countries. They're rocking it. Panama's economic success is out of the ordinary since their economy seems to function well. But how is their success reflected on the population? The recent economic history of Panama has been distinguished by exceptional employment creation. The nation's economy grew from 22% in 1970 to about 50% currently, ranking it as the 16th fastest growing economy in terms of GDP per capita, surpassing the region's average. Its economy is currently categorized as upper middle income and emerging markets. Better working conditions in Panama have been sparked by the country's economic expansion. The employment rate increased from 48% to 63% between 1989 and 2019, while women's labour force participation increased from 34.1% to 55.5%. But you know what's more stunning? The real salaries increased by 60% over the same period, giving a huge number of the population that necessary boost in standard of living. Also, as a result of such huge job creation, poverty rates decreased a lot. The proportion of people living in poverty fell from 10.7% in 2010 to 4.5% in 2019. Additionally, as a percentage of the population, Panama boasts the third largest middle class in the area, after only Uruguay and Argentina. This middle class is defined as those who earn between $14 and $80 per day. On top of that, Panama has implemented significant social protection initiatives, like Panama Solidario, an emergency program that has assisted in lessening the financial effects of the pandemic on Panamanian households, and PASS-U, the Universal Education Grant. So, does it seem like Panama is a paradise? A utopia? Well, despite these stunning accomplishments, there remain some major challenges that Panama is facing. To begin with, Panama ranks third in the area for economic inequality, behind only Brazil and Colombia. One reason for this inequality is an unequal labour market, which leaves certain groups with low-quality jobs. In fact, the Job Quality Index fell from 72% in 2008 to 67% in 2021, meaning that workers there now have less job stability and benefits than they did a few years ago. And that's not the end of it. There are crazy economic differences in the Panamanian labour market, and about half of the workers there lack social protection. Let me tell you a shocking fact. In 2019, the richest 20% claimed 32.7% of the nation's labour income, while the poorest 20% only received 1.2%. Actually, the GINI index of inequality is around 50, which indicates this wealth gap. And I'm not done yet with inequality. Agricultural labourers get only 25% of the average labour earnings of urban workers, while informal workers receive less than half of what formal workers receive. Sorry to tell you that labour inequality isn't the only type of inequality there. There are striking geographic differences there as well. The percentage of people living in poverty is crazy. In rural areas, 17.7% compared to just 5.9% in urban areas. Also, the indigenous population continues to be severely underserved, with little access to necessities like water, power, and sanitary facilities. Panama is highly vulnerable to the consequences of global warming. The Panama Canal has reached extremely low water levels, as we have seen lately in the news, and its traffic has been limited. With so many challenges, you must be wondering whether the government is doing something. Well, yes. Panama has made tackling these issues a top priority on its national agenda, realizing how important it is to do so. One of the government's aims in the 2020 to 2024 strategic plan is to narrow the gaps in social and economic indices that exist between different regions and groups. Plan Culminar, an intersectional effort to boost local capacity and encourage community involvement in public service delivery, was introduced by the government in 2022. In order to increase entrepreneurship and innovation capabilities, it created the National Strategic Plan for Science, Technology and Innovation. On top of that, Panama has made significant progress in building resilience in the wake of disasters. In fact, it implemented its excess rainfall parametric insurance policy, the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility. Going forward, the country should build on this success by creating an adaptable social protection system through the expansion of its recently established National Registry of Beneficiaries. To sum up, the theme of the 2023 International Day of the Eradication of Poverty, which is access to decent work and social protection, hits seriously in Panama due to its past accomplishments as well as the ongoing innovations required to advance its efforts to address issues of equity and poverty. Panama has made stunning progress in reducing poverty and growing economically, but there is still work to be done to combat chronic concerns like inequality. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to receive more content. See you in the next video.